As you all may remember, about a year ago I uploaded a video on this channel analyzing the statistics of the Slotbot flash sales on Cosmic. Initially, the feedback on that video was quite positive, with players and staff members generally being impressed with the results. Within a few weeks of this video being posted, the flash sale system was fixed on Cosmic PvP, and naturally I expected Prisons to follow shortly thereafter. But as the months went by, it became increasingly clear that this would not be the case. I would check in with Slayer every few months, each time hoping for him to say that it was almost finished. But with each ticket I submitted, it was just met with ambiguity and an apparent lack of urgency. The issue was always being pushed to the bottom of the update priority list, and it seemed like it would never be fixed. A few days ago, I was chatting about this unfortunate circumstance when Erin chimed in, and to my shock, not only did she say that they had fixed the issue, but that it had been fixed for a while. This was especially surprising because I had just reached out to Slayer a week prior, and he had stated that it would be some time before it was fixed. In addition to all of this, I had been playing Prisons pretty consistently for the past few months, and I had still seen a lot of flash sales being won abnormally late into the rolls. So immediately, I knew that I had to conduct another investigation and see what I could uncover. To preface this video, I want to mention that I will not be diving deep into the math and statistics behind my analysis today, primarily because I've already done that in my previous video on this topic. So if you're interested, feel free to check that out, the link is in the description. But otherwise, you'll just have to trust me that these methods are correct. With all of that out of the way, let's take a look at the current state of flash sales. If you remember from my previous video, in order to collect data on the past flash sales, I had to write code to read through my old Minecraft log files and find the relevant information. But fortunately, a month ago, a new feature was added onto all 3 Prisons planets, which allows players to right-click on this pane in the Slotbot to view all past flash sales on that planet since its most recent reset. Therefore, all I had to do was scroll through all of these pages on all 3 planets and write down the flash sale information into a text document. Before analyzing the data, we need to determine what we're looking for. In other words, what should we see if the flash sale system is working properly, and what should we see if it's working improperly in the way we believe? First, it's important to understand that while flash sales are ongoing, there is a percentage displayed in the Slotbot, which is supposed to equate to the chance of winning the flash sale on the very next roll. Based on these percentages, we can verify what we should expect to see in the data if the flash sale mechanics are working properly. As we can see here, the percentage at any given moment is equal to 1 divided by the maximum number of rolls remaining in the flash sale. Therefore, if we think back to the math that I demonstrated on the previous video, we know that these calculations should result in the flash sale data in which the sale is equally likely to be won on any given roll. In other words, if we run a huge number of trials, we should expect the flash sale to be won an approximately equal number of times on each spin. Again, if you want to see the actual mathematical explanation behind this, I would encourage you to check out my other video. And in contrast to this, based on my own observations while playing on the server, I expect that there will be a much higher frequency of flash sales being won, very close to the maximum number of rolls, than expected based on this mathematical model. But now let's take a look at the data to see whether my hypothesis is correct. One more thing that I should mention before getting started is that there is only one way for a player to modify their chances of winning a flash sale, and that is the present pile custom block. However, it is important to note that the present pile custom block can only increase your chances of winning, so the use of these blocks would only work to counteract my hypothesis. Therefore, all the calculations and analysis will be run assuming that no present piles are used. But you can realize that even if we were able to account for present piles in our analysis, these trends would just be even more dramatic than what is being presented here. For those of you who are familiar with Python, feel free to pause and review exactly what I'm doing with this script. But essentially, I'm just reading through the text document where I wrote all the flash sale data and performing some functions. First, I had to establish a threshold to evaluate the data. In other words, if I think that too many flash sales are being won on the final roll, I would set that threshold to where it would only count flash sales that were won on the final roll. Likewise, if I think that too many flash sales are being won in the final 10% of rolls, I can set that threshold and only count flash sales that were won in the final 10%. When I set the parameter to only look for flash sales won on the final roll and run the code, this is the output. When I look at any flash sale won in the final 10% of rolls, this is the output. And when I look for flash sales won in the final 20% of rolls, this is the output. Before I ran any quantitative statistical tests, I wanted to just visualize the data. So I created a histogram with all 278 data points, and the trend is immediately clear. As we discussed earlier, if the Slotbot flash sale code were working properly, we would expect to see an even distribution of the data across all 10 bins in the histogram. But here we can clearly see that the first 8 bins are approximately equal in size, while the final 2 bins are significantly higher in frequency. This histogram alone suggests that the current flash sale mechanics result in a much larger percentage of all flash sales being won in the final 10 to 20% of rolls than expected. But in order to have an irrefutable, quantitative quantitative result, we need to utilize binomial probability functions. This is a binomial probability calculator, and it uses statistical functions to calculate the likelihood of a certain data set being the result of certain conditions. N is the number of trials, which is just the number of total flash sales that we looked at, which was 278. P is the probability of success, and in this case, we can define a success as any flash sale in which the prize is won within the final 20% of rolls, and therefore a failure is any flash sale in which the prize is won prior to the final 20% of rolls. And because we know that there should be an equal chance for the prize to be won on any given roll, the chance to win a flash sale in the final 20% of rolls should simply be equal to 0.2. And finally, X is just the number of successes that we saw in our data, which is the output that our code printed when we set the threshold to 0.8, which was 113. When we calculate a result here, the value is laughable. This value, 2.8866 times 10 to the negative 15th power, is equivalent to a 1 in 346,428,320,000,000 chance. And this essentially just means that if we had a flash sale mechanic that functioned properly, and we gathered data for 278 flash sales, you would have to repeat this process on average more than 300 trillion times before you could expect to achieve a result this extreme once. From a statistics standpoint, any p-value less than 0.05, which is a 1 in 20 chance, is generally strong enough to determine that the conditions are abnormal. And clearly this value is at such an astronomical level that there is no denying the fact that flash sales are not acting as intended. When we repeat this same process with the values for flash sales being won in the final 10%, which had the same number of trials, a p of 0.1, and an x of 72, we see a similarly absurd result, with the probability this time being roughly 1 in 29 trillion. Needless to say, this is also irrefutable proof that the flash sale mechanics are not functioning properly. However, when we look specifically at flash sales won on the final roll, things do get a bit interesting. When I made the first video, approximately 1/3 of all flash sales ended on the final roll. However, when we run the code with a threshold of 1, we can see that only 17 of the 278 flash sales were won on the final roll, which is only about 6% of the data. This would suggest that some change was made to the code since I made my previous video, but clearly it did not fully fix the issue. Because we are using the final roll as the parameter here, rather than a percentage of slots rolled, we have to separate the data based on the total capacity of the flash sale. When we do that, we can see that of the 151 flash sales in the data with a capacity of 1,000 rolls, 8 of them were won on the final roll. We can then return to our binomial probability calculator and plug in this information. 151 for the total trials, 0.001 for the probability, because there are 1,000 rolls, and we only want to look at those won on the final slot, and 8 for the X. Once again, the result is an incredibly low number, equal to roughly a 1 in 200 billion chance. Well, that was a lot of analysis, so let's wrap up by discussing what all of this means. We evaluated the data across 3 different thresholds: final 20% of rolls, final 10% of rolls, and the final slot. In each case, the probability that a properly functioning slot bot would yield that data was unbelievably low, to the point that most calculators would just round the values to 0. Therefore, it can be concluded with an extreme degree of certainty that the flash sales on Cosmic Prisons are not currently functioning as intended. When looking specifically at the proportion of flash sales being won on the final slot, there has clearly been a decrease since I uploaded my previous video. But when considering the amount of flash sales won in the 80% to 99% range, that number has increased dramatically. Therefore, my best guess is that they implemented some method to artificially increase flash sale win chances within the final 20%. But that begs the question, if the solution to fully fixing the flash sale mechanics is so simple, why go to such lengths to avoid implementing it? As always, if you have any questions or concerns about the methodology that I used for this analysis, please let me know in the comments or DM me on Discord, and I'll be happy to have a conversation and explain my thought process. Hopefully this video can finally enable the flash sale mechanics to be fixed properly, but rest assured that I will keep persisting until that goal is achieved. Thanks for watching.